It's happening again. And by that I mean I'm going to tell a story about nominally ghosts in my hometown and my experiences, etc. Though I think actually this is where I'm going to branch out a little and do a story of kind of about stuff that I did in my town back in the day, because I remembered like kind of a funny story last time, and I figured that I might as well just like throw that in with just a hint of a ghost story, because I feel bad. Like, Lord knows, what if somebody like stumbles upon this channel and is just like, oh fuck yeah, ghost stories, I want to hear that, and then ends up being like, oh, that was cool for 4 episodes, but this fifth one is kind of bullshit because there's no ghost story. Like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck, man? And then I get like comment threads being all like, dude, what the fuck? Like, your playlist is jacked. We're reporting you to the FCC. And I'm just like, oh no, I'm going to broadcasting jail. I think that's how that works. But so, okay, so you may recall, if indeed you've listened to the previous episode, because this is obviously like a continuing narrative. This is very clearly, like deep in lore, and like there's a history here. Fuck. I just realized how fucking dusty it is underneath this TV over there. Shit. Oh no, like taking off my glasses and just kind of looking at it now, like really, like just looking at the dust. It's very dusty. Shit. I'll probably not dust that anytime soon. I mean, that's probably how it got that dusty to begin with, is literally me being all like, I'll get to that. Okay, so last week, as you may recall, I talked about how the courthouse in Ventura was a... It had been... The architecture for it was drafted by the same fellow who did Grauman's Chinese Theater, amongst other places, in LA, and so it's like really like unusually nice for such like a kind of like little goofy town, coastal town. And I mean, it is. It's lovely. It's a very like nicely built. You can see that there's been an addition made to it that's on the like left side of the building, if I remember correctly. That doesn't quite fit in. It's basically, the courthouse itself is white, and pure as justice is. But the what was it? The additional building is white as well, but it's like it doesn't have any of the like fancy like architectural flourishes or anything like that. But anyway, so that building is supposed to be like haunted to like fucking back, and like I went on a tour, a ghost tour in Ventura, hosted by basically like he's something of a local like celebrity, not like a good local celebrity, but Kevin Costner actually. Technically, Kevin Costner was the local celebrity because I guess he graduated from my high school. I think that he didn't graduate. I think he went there for like a semester and then went and got on with his rich person's famous life. But he likes to come back and go to an occasional basketball game and have everyone be all like, "Ooh, it's Kevin Costner." And I'm just like, "Ooh, it's Kevin Costner." He opened up a nightclub called H2O. It's probably closed now. If nightclubs are anything to go by anyplace else on the planet, it is probably closed. But he had this like nightclub he opened up, and that was like back when like Main Street Ventura was getting like cool as Main Street Ventura could ever get. Not that much. But so the courthouse. Oh yeah, local celebrity, local legend, local hero, town's favorite boy. That's me. is a guy named Richard Sennett. And Richard Sennett is like a local folklorist, like paranormal, like aficionado, and like his wife's a psychic, and like all these, like he's got all this stuff. And he's got a ton of books, and so he's like your, if you want information about Southern California, specifically Ventura, in terms of like ghosts and like regional stories and legends, you got to go to Richard Sennett. He's the only source, and so he would do ghost tours around downtown Ventura and different places, and he'd show you around places and like tell you like all the different stories that he's collected over the years about different things. And so some stuff that I picked up on my own through talking to people and looking up stories and records and stuff like that. Other stuff, you'd get from him, like single source, it's hopeless. One single surviving he's the Rosetta Stone of, ghost stories for Ventura. Like, you can't not use him for a source, for deciphering the ghost languages in Greek and Aramaic or whatever, and Egyptian, Ptolemaic Egyptian, or what have you. I think that's right. I think that, like, in the comments thread of hey, everyone who's not watching this, in the comments thread, like, the Rosetta Stone was made late enough in Egypt's history that was Ptolemaic Egypt, right? Oh man, I got like a ick, horrible. I won't even get into it. It's just like a crumb of like Popeye's chicken was on a microphone I was using earlier when I was eating and using the microphone at the same time, like a fucking gross. Anyway, so I was on a tour with Richard Sennett, amongst a bunch of other people. And when we got to the Ventura courthouse, there was all sorts of cool stories associated with it. So, for example, like one was like, there's this like lots of stories about this like woman from the 40s, based on her attire, that like cruises like between offices up on the second floor, and you can hear her heels like clacking on the marble floors. There's a room that has marble slabs from when the building was made, where they're just like big slabs that were left over for like additional like construction and stuff like that just end up in a room, because like what the fuck else are you going to do with like 1 ton of marble that's like that had already been requisitioned for a building that already had plenty enough marble fixtures in it. And the story goes that like my understanding was that like he was doing a tour when a guy had, like, they'd gone in to go look at the room, and had, like, he'd stayed behind to kind of, like, look, and they found him later in the evening pinned to one of the walls, not dead, obviously, but just, like, squished up against a wall, with the, like, stone, like, pinning him in place. And the guy was basically just like, the minute you guys left, it basically just like slid over here and pinned me to the wall, like I couldn't get out. And it's like 1 ton of like stone, so like how do you climb in like and get pinned behind it? And they had to get all these people like to come over and like help like free him from the stone. I don't know what the fuck that's all about. Like, what fucking ghost is moving around like 1 ton of stone? Like, is it a mule team of ghosts? Whatever. Kind of tired today. Kind of. Jojo's asleep by the door. He told a story. I don't get this one. He said that there was one night, and that he and his wife have no idea what it was, but one night they were in different parts of the building, and it was something along the lines of that, like, she'd gotten a bad feeling about something in this interconnecting hallway that connected the new building to the old building. And she got this bad feeling, and like was basically like, hold on a minute, and goes over and closes the door between the two sides, and at that same moment, like, something started pounding on the door, and she described some sort of like really nasty, malevolent like feeling coming from like that part of like the building. But like they were just like, we have no idea what the heck that would have been, because like this is all new construction, so there's like nothing here, so why would that happen? And I'm just like, and I'm over there in the back just like, yeah, why would that happen? That's kind of weird. Like, that is peculiar. Awful strange. So the government building, or the old courthouse, is now where the city council holds its meetings and stuff like that, up on the top floor. Well, that used to be the building. Obviously was a courthouse, but it was also the like local jail. And so the top floor, the top floor, still has signs of it being a prison. So there's like all the spots where the bars were and stuff like that, and it's, you know, it's a prison from like the 19 son of a bitch. Goddamn ghosts came in my house and made me hit my hand. Oh, you bastards. Oh, you spooky, spooky bastards. Ow. Oh, I pinched my hand in a gate the other day, and now I winged that on the corner, and oh no, my arms. Oh no, ghosts have fucked up my arms. I'm a Muppet now. But so, yeah, so top floor is a prison, and it was small. Like, this is, you know, a pre-20s era, or 20s era maybe, like small town, like jail. So it's like you gotta have space for Otis the town drunk, and like at least one like murderer. Every small town's got one murderer, right? But so there's stories. There are a bunch of stories about weird stuff related to when it was a women's jail. Because I guess in between, when the jail got too small for the amount of prisoners that were going into it, as the town got bigger, then it became a women's jail because there was fewer women prisoners. And I guess there's a bunch of ghost stories involving like women prisoners and like sightings and stuff like that. But there was also an account of like, I guess like some dudes tried to escape one day they tied up a bunch of like bed like sheets together like you do, like threw it out the window and like kind of chiseled their way through, and then they threw a mattress out the window, like so that if like worse came to worse, because it's only like 4 stories tall, they could land on it. And then they climbed out, but like it broke almost immediately and they died. It hit the ground too hard, too fast, too rough. And so there is definitely like a ghost, or a number of ghost stories associated with like looking out the windows and seeing a mattress fly by, and then seeing bodies just like, whoop. And I'm like, you know, I guess that's kind of spooky, but also like that mattress died so that it could become a ghost and haunt that place with those 2 men. What else? Oh yeah, the big spooky one. So the big. Ventura Courthouse was actually home to a number of really creepy, horrible people. One of which, Charles Manson. Charles Manson, like right before he hit LA when he was coming down from Northern California, basically he was a drifter in Ventura before forming the Manson family. And, like, the Ventura PD apparently picked him up on vagrancy laws and were, like, they put him in the jail cell, and they didn't really have a good reason to keep him. And they were, like, super squicked out by him because he was just a weird dude. And they're like, look, tell you what, get the fuck out of our town, and we won't bother you again. But we're going to drive you tonight to the county line for LA, and you are going to be LA's problem. Just don't ever come back here. And he didn't, and look where we're at today. You know, that's Ventura passing the buck on serial killers. Well, whatever you would classify him as, passing the buck on that to other towns. But before Charles Manson, one of the big famous like trials from the state happened, like murder trials happened in Ventura. And basically way back in the day, there was a young man who I want to say he was relatively successful, but he had an overbearing mother. Um, and this is back in the 20s, I want to say. The case ended up getting a lot of notoriety. But so this young man met a young woman. I believe she was a nurse. And they, started going out on dates and being like a couple, like people in their like late 20s, early 30s are wont to do back in the day. And the mom did not like this at all. She, in fact, was furious that the son would A, date someone, B, date a woman, C, move out and not live with, her for the rest of his life and basically look after her and stuff like that. And so she was, definitely like the kind to go out and be all like, this woman's a harlot and stuff like that. Despite the fact that, like, I think her son and this person got, like, married or something like that. Well, anyway, this, like, bitter old woman goes out to the local bars and finds two dudes who she hires to go and effectively collect the wife or girlfriend and murder her and dispose of the body. Yeah, so they go out, they find her, they bury her, or they strangle her and then like bury her out in like the woods somewhere near Ojai. And a police cruiser basically comes by at some point and finds the body. Like, it's basically just driving through and they discover, like, she's half out dead. And it was that, like, they found out that, they, didn't kill her, they just knocked her out. Then they buried her alive, and then just, like, the whole process of digging out and, like, all of it, she just basically died before, like, anyone could, like, offer her any assistance. And at this point, they also discovered that she was with a child. So the state immediately, like, they basically picked up the two dudes who immediately handed over the lady like that. Like, because I think what they also did, part of the problem, I think the reason that the cop car even went through that area was that literally they were bragging to someone about like, oh yeah, this lady just paid us a bunch of money to go out and murder somebody. What a crazy day. Like, this is just news that you spread around. But yeah, so my understanding of it was that like this lady was super duper scary. Like, very just like all the time, very like just cold and mean and like intense, and so she went on trial, and I think she was given the chair. So she was like, I think the first like woman executed in the state of California or something like that, because it's not the first woman executed in the United States. I think, I don't know if that distinction would go to the, like, what was it? Mary Surratt or whatever, the one of the Lincoln conspirators. Like, she was executed by the state, like the government, and that's obviously 1865 or 66, whenever they eventually got to executing the conspirators. So clearly we have at least that long back. But as for California, I think this is the first woman that they executed in the state of California, let alone by electric chair. And so she went to the chair and extinguished. But her trial was held up on the top floor of the courthouse, where the city council now hangs out. And there is a room up in the back that overlooks the whole thing where they set up cameras to record city council meetings. And I guess the story goes that there are, like, serious mad problems with, like the room turning, like, freezing cold and, like, just this really intense negative feeling, like, filling the room, which everyone presumes to be this woman. People don't like hanging out back up in that back room where the cameras are set up, and no one likes going back in there. because I guess like that was her holding area in between, like whenever they're going to be starting the trial, she'd be held back in that like space, just brooding quietly and angrily about her son. Um, and then you'd always have like video problems, electrical equipment failures, and stuff like that. So like workers would have to go back up in there and like poke around. They'd be like, "Oh, it's horrible. It's super duper cold and super duper creepy. Like someone's always watching you." But the big one was always that, like, I guess it's a tradition amongst the police force anyway, that for like new people in like the local police force have to go out and handle calls in the middle of the night to the courthouse. Because what will happen is that there is a panic button in the city council room, like underneath like the head of the city council's like desk, where you can like hit that and basically be all like send an immediate call to the local police to say like, hey, trouble at City Hall, like get to it. And so like at 2 in the morning, 1, 2 in the morning, all of a sudden the alarm will go off, and you've got to send a squad car down, even if no one's supposed to be at City Hall. Send a squad car down, and they like the police talk about how like, yeah, they'll get there and like the whole building will be locked up and empty, the lights will be off, and they'll get up and have to like go into the darkened courtroom, and they'll talk about how like cold it is, and like one described the windows being kind of like frosty, and just like how like oppressive the entire space is, and turn off the alarm, and they've had it like go off like twice in one night, with no explanation. So yeah, so that concludes that particular part of the ghost stories. Of course, there's also the Bard Hospital, which is just next door to the courthouse, another classic piece of California architecture. Served as our first asylum. There's a few other places, but that's not what the rest of the story is going to be about. The rest of the story is going to be just an anecdote concerning my friend Owen and I. And we would go on occasion, rare occasion, hiking, whatever you would call it, walking in the hills. Because I know that nowadays, like, when you say hiking, you're usually like, I was, like, strapped to the rock, and, like, I climbed, like, 62 kilometers straight up into the stratosphere, and, no water, and then I, like, walked down, like, Devil's Ridgeback, and, like, saw a bear, and fucking ate an entire cactus, before heading home in my RAV4, or whatever you drive, and like eating fucking kale by the bucketful. We were just out in the hills around Ventura, out in the ranch country and stuff like that. Ventura has a mountain that overlooks it. There's a series of mountains, but the tallest one is up there, and it has these 2 trees, which is why the spot is called Two Trees. And they're a kind of tree. I can't remember off the top of my head. I remember like the name of like areas and stuff like that, but like the actual technical detail, just like, that's a tree. I'm just like, good tree, good job, you do it. Those trees are dying, by the way, or they're already dead, or they've been in the process of slowly dying forever. So like a landmark which I've like associated with Ventura, and which even my kindergarten had like shirts and stuff like that for us that had the 2 trees on it. That was like the symbol of the city. Yeah, that fucking, by the time I was going up there, that fucking tree was dying. Those 2 trees were dying. And the funny thing is, it's on private land, which they don't really enforce very closely, because people would hike up there nonstop all the time. And there's a way up there I know of, I think would be simple enough. But my friend Owen and I decided to go up a way that we knew where we could park in the general area, and it wasn't necessarily as direct, but we figured that this was like a good way to get in. And that was one mountain over, and then down in this like little valley, like between another mountain and it, a park. We parked down there, and walked across the fields and up into like this trail that runs around the outside edge of the park that's elevated behind trees, and then next to it up is like a fence that like up that straight up is up to the top of this like little mountain, and then you wind your way down into another valley, and then the next mountain is two trees. So I knew a little area, a little wash where like water had run down and created this little like crevasse that ran up the side that like was clearly where some people would use that to get up. And in retrospect, when I think about it, like the paths that I was taking, like there are rattlesnakes in Ventura, and there are a lot of snakes in Ventura, come to think about it. I don't really like snakes. And when I think back, like a whole area, that path that I chose to like get up and down these things, it was a very snaky area. Like that was like, yeah, there was a lot of goddamn snakes in that spot that I never saw in going up and down, but like it's probably not the safest thing to have been doing. Oh well. Anyway, so Owen and I start hiking up this hill, like up this like wash, snaking up to the top. And we get up to the top, we're just like, okay, like where are we going to go? And you gotta like walk along the back of this like ridge, and then there's a trail that breaks away and goes down. And there was a snake up there, like there was a rattlesnake, but it was like off to the side, so if you just like backed up and went down this other path, you could avoid it. But you generally wanted to keep away from like all the grass and stuff like that. You were looking for like the cattle trails. You're using like cattle and like horse trails and stuff like that, because at least then you could see the ground and pick out where the snakes were and avoid them when they did come up. And so you'd wind your way down, and then there'd be a hill, like a road, a dirt road that would like run down in like a loop down to another like trail that ran lengthwise down the mountain, and then it would connect up with the Two Trees Mountain. So we made our way down onto that trail, and we're just like, okay, we're on this road. Two Trees is directly to our left, like you could look right up from where we came out and see like it right up there, but there was no obvious path down. Like the road was here, like into the crevasse, into the lake bed, riverbed, and then like up and up to the trees. So we're just like, oh, if we just walk down like or north, like along this trail away from the city, we would reach some spot that you could cross over and start going up towards Two Trees. Made perfect sense. So we've already gone probably like maybe 3/4 of a mile, maybe a full mile, like up and like with how windy it was to get up and around. And you know, hiking Two Trees is supposed to be something that takes you like maybe an hour and a half or something like that. So we've been at it for like an hour up to that point with the route that we were taking. And as we like walked down this trail, eventually we reached this like big fallen tree, and there was a great big like oak tree or something like that that had like all these branches out. We hung out there for a minute, and I think we ended up eating all of our snacks in that like one go, because we weren't expecting to be out particularly long. It was like kind of the afternoon, and it was still a few hours yet before sundown, and so we're just like, it's fine. So, and like we weren't really provisioned because it wasn't very far, and like who cares? Like I'd been up around that area before, and I frankly had no idea how I'd gotten up to Two Trees one other time, like, but I definitely hiked around the area that we were in some, but this is the first time I'd been out to that tree. And so we're just like, well, okay, if we turn around and go back, like we could see like a path through some flowers that you would take to get up, and like it was super pretty. Like you would go through this field of like poppies and other flowers and whatnot on this like little narrow cattle trail that like ran up. But once you were in it, like it became pretty clear that like this was a cattle trail, like it wasn't for people, and it like went up like a long ways along the mountain. So we basically walked all the way to where the mountain had gone down to like our level, and now we were taking the longest way to go up the ridge as it escalated like up. So it's just this slow trudge to the top. And so an hour later, we make it to the top where Two Trees is, exhausted, and we're just like, oh man, that was a really, really hard and long walk up the side of that mountain. And the thing is that, if from there, there's a very clear path that you can take down that leads down and next to this ranch, and then you just walk out in the sluice between the road, the driveway out, and the trees and everything like that, and it's just this pit where all the water runoff goes through, and you just walk out. Except then, for us, we're just oh, if we go out that way and just go down the trail, then we'll have to go up and around this road, on the road that
leads through the hills of Ventura. We'd have to walk on the road all the way back and up to the park where we parked. And so for some reason we kind of viewed that as being really out of the way and kind of roundabout to have to do. But so we hung out on up there for a little bit, and once we were rested, it was sometime late in the afternoon, the sun was beginning to get lower, and it was beginning to get to the point where we're kind of oh, we really got to head back, especially if it took us 2 hours just to get up this way. And so we're just but we don't want to walk the way that we came from, because that's another 2 hours, and it's a really long way back, and it'll be dark, and we'll be on the wrong side of the mountain, so the sun will be behind the mountain, it'll be super dark back there. And so we're let's, this is probably my idea, to be honest. I'm just why don't we just go, we're up here, we can kind of see where there's clear paths down the side of the mountain, straight down, over to where the path is. We could see the path that we took to get down onto the road that took us back, and we're just what if we just went down the mountain? And to be honest, my idea of going down the mountain, I use that again later, and it basically gets us in trouble again. So come to think of it, I should probably stop recommending shortcuts that take you directly straight down the side of mountains, because inevitably they always end up somehow coming back to bite me. And in this case, it was us cutting down through brush, seriously heavy brush, pushing our way through thickets and stuff like that, both being okay, now we gotta, when we're done, we've got to really stop and make sure that we don't have ticks or anything like that. And on the way down, keep an ear open, make sure we don't accidentally fucking step on a rattlesnake because we're in the brush. And so we make our way push through all this brush and snake our way down until we get to the riverbed. And break through into the riverbed, and we avoided all of the, because the thing was, that's right, there was a clear path that we used to take to get over and through, but over a summer or two, it had filled in with poison oak, and it was just all over the place. And so part of us taking a while to navigate down was avoiding the patches of poison oak to get to that spot and then up and over, because there was no clearly defined trail where there used to be, because it was all poison oak now. So we get to the riverbed, climb up, scramble up this steep dirt incline until we get to the top, and pull ourselves up onto the road that was running north-south, where we saw the big tree down at the end. Well, once we get up, there's a young horse there. Young horse with a blanket on its back, just standing there. And I was just cool horse. And I'm just yeah, cool horse. Okay. So I just I sit down because I am exhausted. I am really burned out on this. And Owen takes out this bottle of water and starts drinking. Well, the horse wants the water. The horse wants the water real bad, and Owen's kind of teasing the horse ever so slightly, and then he leaves the bottle on the ground for a minute, and I'm just Owen, don't leave the bottle on the ground. The horse is going to try to get that that bottle, and God help us if you either leave it there and can't get it back from the horse, and the horse chokes, and you've got a dead horse and us trying to find our way out. And I'm like, that'll be on you. He's like, you're right. So he gets the bottle back, except that the horse at this point is like went to grab it. So he basically pulls this like out of the horse's mouth. And at this stage, the horse seems really unhappy because the horse starts like kind of like doing front-leggedy stuff, and like you can see the whites of its eyes, and I'm like that whites of its eyes thing, that's bad. Like you really shouldn't be seeing that in the horse. Like that's bad news. And I'm like, what we should do, Owen, is we should start walking calmly away from the horse. Like don't run, don't panic. Just ignore the horse and start moving away from it. We don't want anything to do with this horse. So we start making our way the direction that we want to go, and the horse is behind us following, and I have Owen ahead of me. And the idea was that we were going to go down the trail south towards Ventura. So I'm in the back, Owen's ahead of me, and he's like, oh, let's keep moving. And the horse comes up, and I'm like, yep, that's just a big old horse. Just seems real angry. That's getting kind of kicky. When all of a sudden the horse just like leans down and just bites down on my shoulder as hard as it can, just like clunk. And I'm just like, and I like lean in, because thankfully I was wearing I had my leather jacket on, and so it was just like it kind of just got the jacket and like mostly saved my shoulder except for a huge horse mouth shaped bruise. And I immediately turned and like said fuck it and dove in like off the side of the road onto the dirt hill and just tumbled down it into the riverbed to get the fuck away from the horse, because it was like now like kicking up, and then it bit me. And then Owen has this great photo where Owen in moments of like danger has a tendency to freeze up and just like watch what's happening as though it's like happening to anybody else. And so he had like a phone, like a camera photo from his like little flip phone of me getting bitten, and then like there's this just image of like this much of the horse's head like coming up to him as he turned, was just like, oh wait a minute, and he gets off the like thing and ends up down in the pit with me. And I'm like, well, we're down here now, like we can't, like when we turned around and looked back at the path that we wanted to go down on the riverbed, it was all poison oak. We're just like, okay, we can't go through the poison oak, but the other direction back towards the tree and the one like trail up, that's no poison oak, just a lot of brush and overhang. And so I'm like, well, if we could climb back up, but the horse is there, and the horse is standing on the road looking over down at us, and it follows us. So as we try to make our way one way or the other, the horse will like walk along and keep its eye on us, and if I start trying to climb up, it starts stamping again. I'm like, okay, I'm obviously not going up where the horse is, so let's just go down like the river, like the dried up riverbed, back up, and hopefully the horse will get tired of following us after a while, and then we'll be able to get back up. And it maybe, if we're lucky, it won't have come far enough that we have to try to pass by it to get to the trail that leads up to the top of the mountain and then back down into the park. Complicated, I know. So, oh no, small boy. It's a small boy. Small boy. Dear sweet boy. But so as I'm walking, we reach this spot where the riverbed starts to get like damper, a little bit muddier. And because it had been hot recently, but like this was like a nice, cool, damp place. And like all of these brambles and stuff had grown up into natural like cover, but there was no leaves on it or anything like that. So you had to stoop down underneath it and like kind of climb through, and it had created a canopy and like just a little room basically you could go out the other end. And as I'm like down, like making my way through, I look down and I realize that all over the floor is cougar tracks. Like little cougar tracks, and then big cougar tracks, and then like scat like outside on one side. I'm like, Owen, Owen. He's like, what is it? I'm just like, look at the tracks. He's just like, what tracks? I'm just like, look down. He's like, oh, that's a cat. Those are cougar tracks. I'm just like, yeah, those are cougar tracks. I'm like, oh, and I think we might have wandered into a cougar den. And he's like, oh, that's bad. He's like, but there's no cougar around right now, so like we just need to get out of here before the cougars come back. I'm just like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, night's falling. Maybe they've left for the evening to go hunt. If we'd gotten here earlier, maybe they would have been in here. But yeah, we just gotta get the fuck out of here before all these cougars come back, and we'll be A-okay. So here now there's a time limit. We're just like we've got to get out of this area because we've just wandered into a cougar den and we don't know where the cougars are at and we don't know if they're coming back anytime soon. All we know is that the ground is like muddy and wet, which means the tracks must be relatively like fresh and new, since Ventura is not exactly a damp town. It's California, it's always in this perpetual state of drought. But so we make our way a bit further down, and so far the hills have all been like poison oak, so there's like you can't climb up anything. And by the time we keep going until finally we reach like this like kind of bend that has all these like rocks and like big straight like dirt like rises that like lead up to the road, and the horses stopped following us. Thankfully, it lost us once we hit the cougar den and stopped following and went back to whatever bullshit it was doing. But now we were like in this one spot that was just a bunch of rocks and dirt, and like some like areas had like vines and stuff leading up that you could like kind of like pull on, like roots. It was kind of high up, like it was maybe 15-20 feet like from the riverbed up to the trail again. And so I'm like, okay, Owen, I'm like, you first, like pick which way you want to go, because one way was like kind of just all dirt and the other way was all roots and stuff. And in my experience of like going place with Owen was that if I went ahead of Owen would like, if I went ahead of Owen, like I was always worried that like I'd end up like falling and like killing him. And then if Owen went ahead of me, he had a tendency to destroy whatever the means of getting up or through that spot was. Like, and if it was going downhill and I was ahead of him, he'd rain rocks and stuff down on me like from behind. So we always tried to take two different routes like through places. So I had Owen pick which one he wanted to use, and of course he picked the one with like the vines and stuff like that. So he scrambles like up this like vine and like these roots and things, and like gets up to the top pretty quick. And in the process, like the sandy soil and like the dryness of it just crumbles and it's gone. Like I can't use the same path he used to get up, so I'm left with the other path that's slightly steeper and over the rocks. But what I don't think of in the moment is that it's full of holes, like holes that run into the cliff face and like this kind of network, and like little like ramps up and down and whatnot. And so I end up like not putting my hand in the holes, like fuck that, like it's a hole in them, like no, hell no. But I end up like climbing like up like this wall, only to realize like halfway up, like as I'm like getting past holes lower, the lower holes are like beginning to rattle, and so now all of a sudden I'm stuck like climbing effectively a gigantic rattlesnake den. But I managed to like get up and over like out onto the top, and like by then maybe there were just a bunch of baby rattlesnakes and they were all like deep in their holes and they're just like, oh, leave us alone. But yeah, that wasn't fun. And so now back up on the trail, I'm just like, and I'm super tired because I've just like climbed straight up that and then down the hill and everything else, and I've been wearing like a leather jacket the whole time, which is great. That leather jacket has gotten me through so much stuff. Like kept barbed wire off me, like mostly protecting me from poison oak, like saved my skin when falling off things, like it's good at stopping brambles and burrs, and like sturdy. Like I always, like anytime I'm out like in the hills or like climbing or doing anything, I've always got this leather jacket on. So it's like it's hot, but yeah, whatever. Uh, but yeah, so I like we get back on the trail and we start walking back, and like, oh my god, I was so tired. So like we end up having like we have to climb back up this hill, like up and around this horseshoe, and then up to the top of this mountain. So it's like you're just going up another mountain again, and like I was wiped out, like I was done. I was just like, there was a point where I just kind of like stopped, just like laid down, like on the side of the road, and I'm like, I just need to like rest. I'm like, I can't keep walking. I am wiped out. Like my legs don't seem to want to cooperate. I'm so tired. I'm like, but if I lay here too long, like fucking maybe more snakes will just come out and nest on me, and that wouldn't be any good. But somehow I managed to end up like getting enough energy to drag myself like up to the top, down the thing, and then it was easy getting down the hill. Basically, when you go down a hill, it's like when you're really out of it, you just kind of go like, just fall down this, and you just kind of tumble down the hill as best you can, avoiding rocks. But yeah, no, like get back down, get back to the car, go eat. I missed a party that was supposed to be going, a birthday party that was Godzilla themed. I'd made a sweater, a King Ghidorah sweater for it. Missed that party completely because I was stuck on the side of a mountain for like 5 hours, which I'd not intended to do on what was supposed to be an hour and a half trip. It was a fucking Gilligan's Island in the middle of like sagebrush. But so, yeah, no, that's how I got bitten by a horse, ended up in a cougar den, and pissed off a bunch of snakes. So that's that story. That's what I was doing that day. But yeah, so this is my next installment in my various stories of experiences and things that I've done. So hopefully this was enjoyable, and this provides good fodder for like whatever it is you're doing in your day or evening or afternoon, or I don't know, whatever it was you're doing, like primo. Have a nice day, morning, night. Have a nice night, day, morning. Bye.